Thank you for joining us. I know there's lots of temptations out there, so it's great to have you all back. My name's Jonah Bloom. I'm the editor of Advertising Age. I'm going to apologize, first of all, for my voice. Little gravelly. I mean, obviously, I always sound very manly, but particularly manly today. I've got a bit of a cold. I normally say that I'm... Yeah. Do you both want to move away? Just a bit of a cold. I normally say that I'm kind of brought to you at these conferences by Diageo and Johnny Walker Black, but in this case it's a bit more GlaxoSmithKline and Night Nurse or something. We've got a panel of great luminaries here from the media agency world, and we've got a kind of just a basic presidential debate type format where I'm going to ping them questions. And I want to get on with it. One of our panelists, Jack Clues, at the end here, apparently he has to make a board meeting. He thought that Maurice Louvis was more important than the rest of us.
Just this much.
Just a little bit more important. So he's going to dash out. So we ought to get on with it. But there you go. That's the first introduction. Jack Clues, who's the managing partner of Vivaki, and the chairman of Publicis Media Group, and he can tell me if I pronounce Vivaki wrong. I've heard 3 versions already here today. Next to him, we have Nick Bryan, president and CEO of Interpublic's Media Brands. We have a late but great addition to the panel here to my left, Dominic Proctor, CEO of Mindshare. And at the end there, Minardo Donadis, who's the CEO of OMD Global. So, chaps, we'll just get into it. And Jack, seeing as you're going to dash off, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
I think it's the elephant in the room is the recession. How has it changed your business, both in terms of your ongoing business and your approach to new business?
That's an elephant. What I would say, first of all, how it's changed the business. Not unlike anyone else in this auditorium, we've had to do several things. First of all, you've got to really rigorously look on how you can focus on what's important to your organization and to your clients and what isn't. A lot of that requires some cooperation and communication between our clients and ourselves, because at the end of the day, you've got to figure out what you want to do and what work is important and what work can be if not postponed, maybe even eliminated. I think that we're in a place where we're in a race to find ways to standardize things. I was telling Nick just before we came on stage, you know, ad agencies and media agencies are the kind of industry where you'll customize anything to do what's right for your clients. And I know all of you that are in the agency business out there do the same thing. But what's happened is, at least in our cases, we took customization to almost the backroom level. And so what we've got is we have no standardization or homogenization of really common routine practices. We've got too often the same people, different groups of people doing the same kind of work, but doing it in a way because it was designed to satisfy client A versus client B versus client C. And I got to tell you, we're spending time now looking for ways to standardize and homogenize that process on the routine so that we can focus and properly keep investment on the higher value.
So that's partly about not recreating the wheel for every individual client, but do we also need some standardization across the media owners and the media agencies in terms of the way you measure things? Dominic?
Yeah, and the way we transact things. I mean, I think there's been a conversation over the years, for example, about all the different systems we have in different markets of the world, transaction systems, and the way we have so many different types. And, you know, as a grown-up industry, is it now time, for example, to go to one globally developed homogeneous system that it's the same for all media agencies, clients, media owners? It's just much more efficient, for example. I mean, so I think these are the kind of growing pains of an industry that was happening anyway, but has actually absolutely been kicked into the front of the stage by the recession, and that's good.
But you'll all sit here on stage and nod, but is it possible that you could actually see competitors all agreeing to work through one transactional system?
Well,
doesn't it happen in the banking system? Look at stock exchanges.
Airline bookings.
Normally you buy and sell shares in one system.
That never seems to have stopped the media industry being more childish than that. So
Well, I think Marie-Louise said it in when she and Steve King did their wrap-up session this morning. I think we're in a space now. Well, we all have decided we need to grow up because we're in a world where it's all about new partnerships and new collaborations. And I see no reason, as Murado said, for that not to happen.
Now, when we're talking about new partnership and new collaboration, we've already heard a bit about this today. But one of the interesting things is, you would think at the very least there would be collaboration between the client and the agency, and then we'll talk about the agency and the media owner, but at least between the client and the agency. And yet very often it seems to me the agencies there's not even a collaboration between the client and the agency. It's basically treating the agency as a vendor. And right now that seems to me that's creating a real risk.
That depends. I mean, like in life, there are good relationships and there are less good relationships. And I think if we're going to look at the recession, which is the first question you asked, if we're operating in that environment, we need to use that, as Dominic said, to kickstart a lot of the pressures and initiatives we were taking. I think it's incumbent on all of us, and the good client relationships reflect this, that people are looking to turn disappointment and disadvantage into something positive. Because without that, any recession, from an economic and a social point of view, is very painful. And it makes no sense to simply live with that pain as opposed to the thing. From a design point of view, I mean, you talk about the relationship between the agencies and the media owners. By design, as opposed to continual effort, I think we've got to be looking at structures of businesses to say, how are we working? So that's the same conversation we've been having with clients, but we've not had that with media owners. And I think that's a huge opportunity.
But both in terms of the client relationship and the agency relationship, obviously right now we've got some major risks being taken. Do you feel, Nick, like you're exposed to too much risk right now on behalf of your clients?
It's the nature of the industry that we're always going to be taking a certain amount of risk. We've also got, along with Jack, along with all of us on the stage, we've all got automotive players. There's challenges around that. And I think there's a lot of concern that what happens in terms of the relationship with the media owner, should there be bankruptcies and this kind of thing. Yeah. I think those have to be talked out. This is where, to a certain extent, everyone's in the same economic problem. Right. So if we continue to compartmentalize it between the agency, the client, and the media owners, we won't get the level of effectiveness to resolve these issues as well as long-term design improvement. And I think that's the opportunity.
Does that mean that sequential liability is not the answer, that there has to be a different way of structuring some of the risk involved?
Well, that's a huge question, and I think long-term, yes, we can't do this overnight, but I was telling the story over lunch. I bumped into a friend I knew at university, hadn't seen him for 25 years, right, and he's a lawyer for a big global legal practice, and he asked me what I did, and I told him. It took me about 20 minutes to explain, and he said, right, so if I've got this right, you spend upwards of $10 billion of other people's money, you take maybe 2 or 3, 4% of that. If they go bust, you take the liability, and they tend to fire you every 3 years anyway. I said, that's about it. He said, you're fucking mad.
Yeah.
So, there's a risk.
Right. Yeah, I just would add on to that, John. I think that that this is a time for us to reframe our agency media owner relationship. I would like to get the conversation beyond renegotiated terms and low price and all that. I think we're going to get to a place where I would like to put some teeth and some understanding if we're acting as agents. Sequential liability is there for a purpose, and it's logical and reasonable to Dominic's conversation with his lawyer friend. And we ought to just, the notion that we all kind of dodge around it, it really does have to stop. It's there for a purpose, and I would look for in stateside organizations like the 4As to take a more definitive stand in that regard.
But if you go beyond the sequential liability, which is very much a US issue, and it may not affect the whole audience, I just wanted to repeat what Nick said before. Risk is a function of this business, like every other business. You can't be in a commercial enterprise if you don't take a level of risk. Our job is to manage risk, and of course, in a recession is harder. But I think that all the big agencies have internal systems to manage that. So I wouldn't say that that is our biggest threat today. I'm much more worried about a number of clients perhaps asking unreasonable terms of business, long delayed payments, or other forms of risk. That is much more of a worry, I think.
Well, that's definitely part of the risk I'm talking about, is the delay in payment terms. But also to your point, the terms of business, and to Dominic's story, this business of the percentage for which you guys are all working. Now, I mean, I know I've sat here and talked to some of you about this before, but I mean, how are we going to get beyond that, what is essentially a small percentage payment, it almost becomes about managing their money rather than offering a value-added service?
Well, we've all talked about this, and I think it goes hand in hand with risk, because we've now spent 5 minutes highlighting the risk. It's clear. What about the rewards? And the rewards are going to be when we can demonstrate our IP, the creative side of the contribution that we're making in a rigorous, strategic format. It's successful, we share in that success. I think if we are able to get the level of accountability, secure the data, have a very tangible opportunity to segment and dissect all elements and see the contribution we've made, why is it not reasonable and certainly possible to share in the commercial upside? That's, for me, I think, one of the biggest places we can go when we get the blend of art and science in the right space.
And we've talked about that. You know, what I'd like to do is, you know, leave Valencia with maybe we take one step toward some action. I think part of what we need to get there is we do need to move ourselves as an industry to a place where we're prepared and with a fair degree of confidence, some risk understood, but fair degree of confidence that we're prepared to accept outcome-based remuneration, value-based pricing, whatever you want to call it. We really got to get there. We do talk about it philosophically. We've taken on some initiatives ourselves, and there's some pretty smart outside consultants that can help get us there, we hope. But at the end of the day, I think what's going to get us there is we're going to have to take on a shared responsibility with our clients to make sure we have the data in which we can base such remuneration schemes off of.
I was going to say, I mean, would you envisage that being transactionally based? Because while so many programs are still based on these sort of distant surrogate metrics like, you know, how many people recalled that advertisement, you know, it seems like that's a difficult thing on which to base a kind of an outcome-based compensation.
Yeah.
So is it going to be based on the client actually selling stuff and you...
I think in some cases it can be, or a part of it can be.
Have you got any examples as yet?
I wish I did. No, but that doesn't. But we're moving. I think that what you need is you can find retailers in that space. That's pretty easy.
Right.
And convenience, you know, fast food, convenience foods. You can find store counts and traffic counts. You know, that space is going on in our automotive clients because it's all about bringing qualified leads to dealerships. So there are all these possibilities, Jonah. Some are built in. Most are built in now as incentive schemes rather than core remuneration. But what I'm talking about is we change the whole thing. And in order for the whole thing to change, we both have to, I think, share in identifying the data needed, the cost to capture the data, and then what it's going to take for us to automate it, to steward it properly. And we just need to get to that next step.
And then does there need to be
to put it off on our clients.
Does there need to be a common agreement between you guys to operate that way? Otherwise, you're going to always have someone.
No, and I think it's different client by client. And what it normally happens is that you're measured on a pool of KPIs anyway. It's never just one thing. It's very, very rare. I've never seen it when it's just one. And if you're measured against a pool of KPIs which are relevant to the marketing strategy of the client, they tend to be different time by time. Okay. I think the problem today is that we all have some good case studies where we get some value-based remuneration, but if we're all very honest, is that more than 10, 15% of the total revenue that we make as an agency? Probably not. I think it should be 50% or 50% plus, not 10% minus. That is a challenge, how we move it from 10 great case studies to 200, 300 clients.